Hello YouTube, it's Lang here with Hobbies of a Man once again, and today we are doing another manga review. Today we are reviewing Blue Exorcist up to chapter 131, which is the latest chapter so far. I actually thought of doing this by arcs, but I didn't really feel like it because it's really not that many chapters. Like with One Piece, I think it's fine because One Piece is huge, right? So it makes sense. Like 100 chapters is basically its own manga series on itself. And Blue Exorcist isn't really like that. Plus, I wouldn't really be able to do the latest chapter or like the latest arc, which is kind of like the big climax of the story so far, until a lot longer, like in the future, because it's a monthly series. So I decided to do Blue Exorcist as a like single review story so far kind of way, which is up to 131, right? Which is the latest chapter so far. And yeah, the author is Kazue Kato, who, as far as I know, is a woman, which is kind of interesting. I mean, it really makes no difference. Like, an author is an author, regardless of what it is. But it is kind of meaningful in the sense that, like, most of the time, shonen authors are male, because it's a male demographic, I guess. And I guess the few female authors that make it big in the shonen industry, or in the shonen genre, demographic, it's not a genre, are kind of meaningful, right? Like the one that did Full Metal Alchemist, the one that did Inuyasha, and like all of those other series as well. I really appreciate them in that sense because they're kind of like different. But at the end of the day, an author is an author. Their gender doesn't really make that much of a difference. So yeah, publisher-wise, this is Viz, and it's obviously a Shonen Jump title, so the demographic is Shonen. And the genres here are basically urban fantasy. I guess you could say it's also dark fantasy. And there's a certain element of adventure here because a lot of the time they're kind of running around different places trying to figure out what's going on. Adaptations-wise, I say yes, and there's two different adaptations. There's the first original series, which only covers the first 3 arcs, and then it has another arc that is more or less correct to the manga now, but at the time was completely different from the manga. And it's not really correct because it's not exactly how it's playing out, but it is somewhat similar in like context. But I think it's because it's a really easy kind of idea to have at the time, and especially now, it makes sense. And then there's the other one, which is called the Kyoto Mission, or the Kyoto Season or something like that. I can't remember the title of it, but it basically covers the 4th and 5th arcs, if I remember correctly, which is pretty nice. I remember the first one. I actually watched it a long time ago. It's actually one of the big anime of my childhood, the ones that I really remember watching. It was like Dragon Ball, Naruto, Saint Seiya, Blue Exorcist, Air Gear, and there was another one that I remember, and Fairy Tail. Those are the 6 kind of big anime that I watched when I was a kid. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I like it. The premise here is basically that there's a pair of twin brothers, Rin and Yukio, and they happen to be the sons of Satan in this world where Satan and all of the other kind of associated demons are kind of like godly creatures, and there's Mononoke and yokai, and all of them have to do with these big demon guys, right? And basically, Rin and Yukio have a father figure who's like a father in the Christian sense, that dies in the first chapter of the manga, trying to save Rin. And now Rin, in order to try to kind of avenge / come to terms with the fact that his father figure died, he joins the True Cross Academy to become an exorcist. And we follow his journey to being the top exorcist, which is called the Paladin. And it's kind of interesting because although Rin's goal is to beat Satan and become a Paladin, it's not really in the same sense of importance as it would be to become the Wizard King for Asta or to become Hokage for Naruto. It's a very kind of secondary goal that just happens to align with the fact that Rin has to be the best exorcist he can be because he's basically under threat of death for being the son of Satan and for having access to Satan's powers, right? So it's kind of interesting. I like it. It's a very interesting kind of enjoyable manga series. It definitely has all of the shonen tropes, but I think it handles them a little bit differently in a way that's relatively refreshing. So yeah, let's look at the plot line here. I think it's great. It has a slow and steady start, and it's actually a little bit boring, and I'm not exactly sure if it's because I watched the anime before I read the manga, or if it's just because it's actually kind of slow early on. That really ramps up a lot over the course of the first 50 to 60 chapters. It is a very solid and well-structured and well-outlined story. It doesn't ever feel like there's anything missing, and in fact, I really think that the plotline very nicely develops. It's kind of like it's linear, and everything is a clear progression of the previous thing, but each arc kind of can stand on its own, as in, like, you could read this where each arc is kind of like its own separate book in a heroic fantasy type of story, which really makes no difference at the end of the day. In terms of reading, if you read all of it in one go, it doesn't really make a difference, which is how I read it. But it's kind of interesting to note. I like this plot structure, and I really enjoy it. It's very thought out and methodical. You know that this author probably has like thousands of notes on when things happen and what was foreshadowed and what wasn't, and what was going to be something that happened, and when she would have to establish it and reuse it in order to continue the plot line along. I think there's very good usage of Chekhov's gun and a lot of other foreshadowing techniques here that works really nicely. I really enjoy it. It's very well structured. It's also very fun. It makes a lot of sense in terms of like the characters, and in fact, I actually think it's a very character-driven story instead of a very like external forces story. That is to say that we see Rin doing these things because Rin wants to, not because Rin is being told to by a prophecy, which at the end of the day maybe doesn't make that much of a difference for certain readers, but to me it makes a lot of difference because in terms of character agency, that makes a difference, right? A character that does what the prophecy tells him to has no agency. A character that does what he feels like, or that is written in a way that makes you feel like he's doing what he feels like, has a lot of agency. And I really prefer that type of character over the traditional epic fantasy kid that's fulfilling the prophecy type of story. So it's really good. It's refreshing. I really enjoy it. And I kind of like that it starts as a magic school kind of setting, like a very kind of maybe slightly darker than usual kind of magic school setting. But then it turns into this like crazy world-saving thing with conspiracies and evil organizations within evil organizations and stuff like that. It's so good. I really enjoy it. It's a lot better than I anticipated it being and that I remember it being. So I like that a lot. Characters wise, it's great. Everything happens because of them, and I like that a lot. Some characters we don't really even meet until the last or the latest two arcs, but they've been running the show for the whole time, and I think that's really awesome. It's very interesting. It's a lot of bait and switching in terms of like who the bad guy really is, and it does like that sort of idea bothers me a bit usually, but it's just so well executed here, and you can really understand it. And the fact that you kind of expect it from every character, because for some reason, even though the place is built around killing demons, there's a lot of demons in charge of this organization. So it's like, yeah, well, I mean, they were the devil. Of course, they're going to be shitty people behind the scenes. It makes sense, right? So the whole bait and switch thing doesn't really come off as like badly done, because it's expected from the very beginning because of the associations people have with demons and devils, right? So it works really nicely. And Rin and Yukio are a very interesting kind of duo, because Rin is the main character of the story, but Yukio is like the one that carries it emotionally for me, because it's a story about two twins that are on the opposite side of things, struggling, trying to be like the other. That is to say that Rin is jealous of Yukio's intelligence and his strength, in the sense that like he is able to follow in his father figure's footsteps, and Yukio is jealous of Rin in terms of his strength, as in the fact that he doesn't need anyone, that he is able to succeed and have everything work out in the end due to the sheer power that he has as an individual. And it's kind of interesting. They both kind of see that the other got the attention of their father in the way they wished, which is kind of like a very, it's always greener on the other side kind of idea. And it makes sense, right? Like, if two kids that are raised by the same person at the same time, and they're not different ages or different genders, you're going to definitely have a problem where they see how they're being treated differently. And maybe it's not because they don't, one is liked more than the other, but rather because one needs a different type of parenting than the other. And it kind of causes confusion between them, and it causes a lot of fighting between them. And I really like it. In Rin and Yukio's case, it ends up being very interesting. And the sibling jealousy is very good in terms of like understanding where they come from. So I really liked it. Very well done. Although the secondary characters are really good, I really enjoy Mephisto, and I guess Amaimon is kind of interesting, but not that much. All of the X-Wires are pretty good. I like Shime, the nice garden girl, and I really like the other girl as well. I can't remember her name right now, but I like her a lot because she's kind of like a tsundere, and she's kind of mean and horrible at the beginning, but it makes sense, and I really love her character growth from like really shitty person to mostly like shitty, but because she doesn't know how to be good, but she's trying her best to be a good person. I really appreciate that sort of growth, and I like her a lot. And yeah, overall, all the characters are very nice. World building wise, I think it's super solid. There's a lot of demon lore and a lot of kind of like, I think it's demonology. It's not really Christian based lore, but I think it's very interesting. And it's very enjoyable. I like that there's a lot of hierarchy to the demons. I like that all of the demons are related. I like that there's an essential five-way balance between the different types of creatures. Kind of very similar to Naruto in the kind of like, what would it be? Like Shinto, Buddhist type of balance where it's like earth, lightning, fire, air, water kind of thing. And they kind of like are in a roulette and they go in a circle. I like that a lot. I think it's very good. And I like that there's kind of connections. And like if you're fighting a fire demon, you need to have a water demon and an earth demon in order to subdue it. And you have to like a lot of stuff like that I think is very interesting, very nicely done. So yeah, very good stuff on the world building. I really like it a lot. And yeah, there's a lot of good weaving of characters and character backgrounds that works really nicely, and I think it's very well done. So art-wise, it's very good, it's solid, and it gets better and better every chapter. And by the end of it, I noticed that the characters are a lot more squarish, as opposed to a lot rounder from when they were in the beginning. And I assume that this is done in order to show that they've grown as individuals, like they've grown older, right? Which is kind of like what happens to people in real life. If you're a kid, you have a lot of baby fat all over your face, but then as you get older, that kind of leans out. Well, I mean, assuming you're thin and not fat like me, you kind of like your face gets a little bit more angular because you're older and now you don't have all of that baby fat. So I like that, and it's kind of interesting, and it also shows that they're really built because, you know, like when your neck is the same as your head, it's like usually that's people that work out a lot. So it's kind of interesting. I like it. I think it's very nicely done. There's huge double spreads and a lot of character design elements that are very nicely done. The clothing that all the characters wear is very nice. The creature designs are very good as well. I like them a lot. Overall, very good art. It's kind of interesting. I don't really see people talk about Blue Exorcist very often, but it's very, very enjoyable, and the art is very good. Fanservice wise, there's some, and it's basically all centered around one single character, and that is the snake lady. What is her name? Shura, I think is her name. And there's also a lot of shirtless dudes, but fanservice wise, it's really low. There's not that much. There's very minimal amounts. But I mean, if you don't like any of it, this is not for you. So yeah. Rating wise, this is a 4 out of 5. Sorry, not a 5 out of 5. A 4 out of 5. It's very good, but the slow start brings it down a little bit to me. I understand that it's a kind of slow burn, kind of very open, very large story, and it happens over a long period of time. But I would have liked it to be a little bit faster. The pacing early on was pretty weak, and it only got better later. And I think that itself is kind of a negative. I understand that it's because the manga is growing, but it still kind of drops it down a little bit for me because it's not as good as it could have been, right? But other than that, good world building and good characterization. I really enjoyed it, and that's why it's a 4 out of 5. It blew my socks off in that sense. Like, it was very well done and for those two things. So yeah, that's it for me. I definitely recommend this title. I think it's very good. And similar titles wise, I'm not really sure I have one. There's a lot of kind of like series that you could say are similar. Especially now, I think Black Torch could work kind of similarly. There's a lot of elements that are similar in like the way the main character looks and the main character is familiar and stuff like that. You could say that Demon Slayer is kind of similar as well. Naruto is kind of similar as well, but I don't really think that any of those really are as similar as they could be. But I also don't have that wide of a selection to choose from to say, yeah, read this if you like this. But generally, if it's in Shonen Jump and it's a battle manga, you're going to like all the other battle manga that are in it. So, I mean, just read one of the other ones, preferably one with swords like Bleach, Demon Slayer, Black Clover, or what's the other one that I mentioned? I can't remember the other one that I mentioned, but that one. Oh, Black Torch. There you go. That's the one. But yeah, overall, good stuff. I really enjoyed it. Definitely recommend it, and I hope you guys check it out. Thank you guys for watching, though. This is all I have for you guys today, so thank you guys. And if you enjoyed it, please leave a like, subscribe, and comment down below. You know, all of that regular shilling junk that I have to do at the end of the video. And yeah, see you guys later.